Morality.
Tonight, we give our 2 slips of Latinum for how we feel about Star Trek Picard, then we go back in time to 1923 to see the latest struggle from the Duttons, and then back out to the final frontier with DS9. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers! And welcome back to the best place to be on Tuesday nights. I am, of course, your host, Petey York, joined, as always now, by the ever-so-lovely H. Marie, the almost as lovely Mr. Corione, Witch-in-Residence, and this weirdo beneath me in pink. Who cares? We are, of course, here to discuss and finally give our perspective and review on Star Trek Picard, the first episode, which has been a bit of a hot-button issue since we learned there was a Star Trek Picard Season 3 coming out, and, well, a lot of us weren't so sure, and you'll have to stick around to find out what we think. But first, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to you, Corio, and you've got some pop culture news you'd like to share with the class.
Yeah, so let's start with some of the biggest ones here. Hasbro has been slapped by Bank of America for destroying customer goodwill. They're now rating the Hasbro stock as double sell, which is their financial terms for get rid of this stock as quickly as you can because the company is circling the drain. Basically, they've decided that because of all the terrible things Hasbro has done to each and every property Hasbro owns, be it from eliminating fan conventions for Transformers fans, forcing 40-year-old former soldiers at a G.I. Joe con to give their pronouns before being allowed to ask questions of the panelists, to charging $1,000 for 3 expansion pack sets of cards to Magic the Gathering players, and then tell them those cards are no longer tournament legal after they've pre-ordered them, to all the nonsense on the open gaming license. Hasbro's managed to alienate, annoy, or generally harass every single one of their customers, and the customers are in open revolt. It's gotten to the point now where If you're a fan of a Hasbro property, you're looking at third-party options for whatever toys you want to pick up for it. And that's becoming a very popular thing, and Hasbro seems to not care that this is going on, or at least not doing anything about it in terms of getting rid of the upper management that's been at fault for all of these decisions. Looks... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I think Retro Blasting really put it most eloquently with their Man-Child news video, and that Hasbro is truly functioning like a house on fire. And, I mean, I didn't even know about any of the stuff you just listed off. Like, that's the first time actually hearing about it. Because the other things that they had listed was the cheap manufacturing with the toys and just all the other poor decisions that Hasbro's like, how do these people get, like, what happened? That, like, every major company, every major toy distributor, like, how do we get idiots in charge of all these companies? Like, we have the most supreme dumbasses ruling all aspects of pop culture right now. Whether it's the news, whether it's movies, whether it's shows, whether it's freaking toys. Like, what is going on? I just, it's idiots everywhere.
It's literally the greed culture. Like, I feel like a lot of people talk about, like, these, like, who are these hustlers in the hustle culture, and, like, I'm 90% sure the only people that have money to be hustles in hustle culture, like with their stocks and their bonds, are the people that run upper management of all these corporations. Like, they're the ones that keep going, like, we got to get this new $1,000 item so we can jump on the Supreme, the NFT, the every single thing we can think of to just get these hot button items. It's like, wait, haven't you guys always been the number one trusted brand in toys? Like, why not just stick to that and make millions of dollars selling $10 toys, because that's what people can actually afford? And then they're like, no, I just railed cocaine in the bathroom, so, like, I got to make this new $1,000 Magic the Gathering card set that's too good for the tournaments, so whoever buys it is basically just NFTing a wasted item.
Yeah.
Like, it's people that don't understand collectibles trying to hawk collectibles so that they can get collectible money tomorrow when you have to wait 20 years to return on your investment. Like, that's why we call people with Pez for days weird. Like, they're literally holding on to them to gain value. It's not about getting the value just because you made the exclusive copy. That's not how Ferrari was made. That's not how Bugatti was made. That's not how any of your favorite thing that you wear on your wrist was made. So stop selling it to us like that's how it's made, so you can make your extra $1,000 commish.
Well, absolutely. Look, and I mean, I'm only touching a very, very upper layer of the iceberg of suck that is Hasbro. I mean, there is stuff that I can't actually mention on YouTube that they have done for fear of getting this channel never able to be monetized, that they casually did.
Man, that sounds like the shit that I want to hear about now.
Well, I'll see if I can clean it up for YouTube's, most sensitive ears. But Magic the Gathering tournaments are typically refereed by Magic the Gathering players who volunteer to join the referee kind of league, if you will, to be able to referee tournament events, and they get updates on the rules ahead of time and a bunch of other things. They failed to do criminal background checks on them. And a lot of these younger players in tournaments were being approached by, let's just say, people that were very interested in them for reasons of their youth. Not because of any sort of ethical reason. And, they failed to do the background checks when they were told legally they had to do them to run a tournament like this. When they got caught, they said they didn't know how, or they didn't know they had to. But the truth is, they did know. They were warned repeatedly.
So they're
under the rug.
Yeah. So they were okay. So these types of people were basically on a what?
You you're telling me Magic the Gathering and the people who run Magic the Gathering, Hasbro, the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is, couldn't actually come up with an app to do background checks like Uber can, an app made out of somebody's basement in Silicon Valley? Like, get out of here. You're lazy. Like,
Yes.
that's what you spend your money on. Like, imagine if Hasbro's name was notorious with stopping child predation.
Yep.
That would be insane. But instead, you guys just are as bad as them by taking their money.
Well,
Like, you're part of the death
argue
cycle.
they were protecting them.
Just out of laziness, negligence. Like,
Yeah.
it's not okay if a parent abandons their child in the hot car. It's not okay if you don't run background checks on things where children will be going to spend hours of their day in attendance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the point of running this organization, is that you're supposed to be organized.
Yep. So
Well, they are organized, John. As Retro Blasting has already said, they are truly functioning like a house on fire.
Yeah.
And this just puts further emphasis on it. Like, wow, but this is, I mean, for lack of a better word, I can't think of this is a company that shaped some childhood memories for John and I. I mean, I'll
for me too.
straight up admit it. Like, the Transformers toys were some of our favorite when we were kids.
Oh, listen, when it comes to G.I. Joe, look, my dad was Army, my mom was Navy, okay? And my grandfather was Army, or was armored, was armored anti-air. Literally, the three of them used to buy me more G.I. Joe toys from that particular branch to try to show which branch was better. I had an army that would rival most small nations based on the amount of tanks and ships and what have you I had. And and when it comes to Transformers, dude, I am literally looking around this room where there isn't books, there are tiny plastic robots. Okay? Hasbro is like life for me, and I can't stand them anymore.
Well, and the worst part is like, these people are, like Parker said, this is just par for the course at the upper management of the industries these days. And it's like, aren't you guys the same people lobbying, saying that like the poor are lazy and greedy and begging for more money? Like, look at the real lazy people. They're the ones making all the money. They're the ones too lazy to do stuff to protect children. Like, they make children's toys. Your target market is the one group you don't protect the most. Like, at what point, who do we actually think are the smart and who are the dumb? Who are the actively working and who are the lazy? Because it's really starting to feel like we're blaming the poor for being poor, but only the rich are really ruining people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like I said,
Look,
started it going off on a rant earlier. Like, how did we get idiots in these types of positions? How did these idiots make it there? Because we need to evaluate that problem, and we need to stop it from happening. I mean, I don't want to say like, we need to establish some sort of meritocracy type system and force it on companies, but it's like, if they're going to have this much power and influence, at what point do we start drawing some boundary lines? At what point do we say, okay, you guys have control of this much industry, and what? Did we lose our internet?
Yeah.
Brain is definitely coming in broken.
You guys there?
You-
Still with me?
you guys are
Still here.
The stream on my end actually looks good, so I don't know who's disconnecting where. Well, anyway, hopefully we'll get the technical issues figured out shortly. It's just, suddenly you guys stopped, and then... Alright, looks like Corion, you're working again. One of the downsides to being a dedicated internet show is we're at the mercy of the net.
Yeah, so what I was actually going to point out is, look, I think it boils down to this. Hard times breed hard people. Hard people breed softer times, which breeds soft people, which cause hard times. And we are in the CEO soft times region, or CEO soft people region right now. And they're going to ultimately cause hard times for their company and going to force more decisive people who are harder edged into positions of power. And we'll have to wait for that cycle to correct itself now.
Great. So the beast the machine continues to churn, as always.
Yep.
Yeah, but, at the same time, I haven't bought a Hasbro product in some time, and I'm not going to at all. I'm sure I could probably recover some of my old collectibles if I felt the need to. But I think with that, that should probably conclude our pop culture segment, because I have a feeling our Picard segment's going to last, well, judging from what we were talking about backstage, we're probably looking at about an hour. So, if you're on Twitter or anywhere else where there's internet, you might have heard that Star Trek Picard, or Pucard as some have referred to it, I myself have definitely referred to it, because wow, that first season was bad, and it was so bad I didn't watch the second season, so I don't really have an opinion on the second season, which I guess softened me up to watch season 3. So I'm going into this only having that nightmare of a season 1 that doesn't exist in my timeline. And, I'm basically seeing this as season 1 of Picard. Now, there is some issue that a lot of people are saying, and there is an idea that's been floating around from a lot of the absolutionist types and people that just absolutely hate Kurtzman, and I get it. He's done a terrible job managing the property, more or less. Did a couple of things right with Strange New Worlds, but even that had its problems. And so, of course, here we are on the 3rd season of a show that is very controversial in the Trek fan base. But what I wanted to touch on was, if this season turns out to be good, it is not, it's not going to be an endorsement of the past. I'm not suddenly going to, oh, that's right, I was going to open this rant with how great New Trek was, and I totally forgot. Been a long day. But that's just not how it is. I'm not going to go back and watch Discovery Season 3, 4, and if they have a 5th season, I don't care. I'm never actually going to watch Discovery again, even though I kind of liked Season 1 personally. I'm probably not even going to touch Season 1 of Strange New Worlds again, and that one was a better step in the right direction. I'm not touching Prodigy, just because it's not for me, and I've kind of enjoyed Lower Decks, but even then, that shows lowbrow, easy humor. The 3rd season was, again, a couple more steps in the right direction, and there's certainly an audience for that show, but I don't really give it high praise. If Season 3 of Picard is really good, we're going to tell you it's good because we like it. We're going to tell you it's good because each of us has reasons for it to be good. If it's bad, we're going to tell you the reasons why we think it's bad. We're going to tell you the reasons why we don't think you like it. Ultimately, we want you all to make your own decision. We want you all to go into shows and decide for yourself if it's something that you want to embark on. A lot of the other pop culture pundits that I follow have been giving this show praise because they've had advanced screenings, and so I'm trying not to let that influence my perspective on it, because I just want to give my overall review. However, I will say that while I was planning on putting the what we did like and what we did not like up, I couldn't really bring myself to do it personally. I think that there's going to be a pretty balanced discussion overall, and so we'll just leave it as general discussion. But who wants to start?
Well, I just want to also remind, welcome, Galinda.
Yes, Galinda. Glad you're here.
Glad to have you here. Way to join us right as we start the main meat of the conversation.
Exactly.
But I do want to say that, like we did with Kenobi and like we did with Halo, if at some point it just feels like we're on a negative train to negative town, like, we will bail. And if it's the last episode or the last 2 episodes before we bail, we'll do a wrap up. We'll do like an extra feedback.
Like what we did with Kenobi.
Yeah, exactly. So
we wanted to get that shit over with.
We're not going to stick around to dog on it if that's all we can do about it. But
exactly.
We'll do what feels right according to us, because that's what we've always done and that's what we've always given you, and that's who we are. That being said, I think Picard was fun. Does somebody have the synopsis? I think we should start there.
Well, Corion, why don't you give your initial thoughts? And John's right. I should have pulled up the synopsis, so I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll
All
read
right.
it.
I'm going to say right now that initially I was definitely against this. I had watched the first 2 seasons of Picard.
Which I'm really sorry you watched that second season, by the way. You have my condolences for that.
Yeah, my therapist says I'm making significant progress. But, going into season 3, he was concerned, and I was on a little bit of a suicide watch for a little while because he felt that Picard was my version of self-harm. Look, I wasn't really a fan of the idea from step one. I feel like Star Trek is always about going forward, about progressing to the future. And while we can look back at the value we have gained from the past, we shouldn't be stuck in the nostalgia of the past, which is what I feel that Picard really is at its core, is an attempt to use nostalgia to bring in previous fans to make them a part of new Trek. Now, I have after watching, and I will freely admit, there were people that when I said I was going to be watching Picard season 3, messaged me and said, look, are you all right? I'm concerned for you. I'm really concerned that you're not going to make it through this. And I won't lie. Normally this is just Coke Zero, but there's a lot more rum in this than there ever has been before. And I think it's going to stay that way. As we try to get through this, because, what
do you call that drink? Is that like a rum and Noke?
Yeah,
because it's
no
Coke, no Zero, no Coke Zero, no sugar.
A Cubra Nobre, right? Right. But yeah, it's look, man. I will tell you how I honestly feel about it. I actually did notes as I was watching it. I tried to watch this from a very analytical, pull myself out of the scenario kind of feel for it. Just watched it based on okay, I'm going to try to watch this based on the merits of this alone, not on any of the previous new Trek, not on my nostalgic glasses for next gen. None of that. I'm just going to watch it on its own merits and see how I feel about it. Now, I am doing that based, though, on the knowledge that we have gained in how, say, Star Trek technology works based on the previous seasons, which I think is fair, because we've gotten a lot of, technological explanations from previous episodes about how certain things work because they were the plots of previous episodes, and that should inform the canon of episodes going forward. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
But also,
I was going to say, Galenda writes in, the nostalgia thing worked for Boondock Saints 2, but it was a movie, not a series, and it was amusing. I actually am one of those idiots that liked Boondock Saints 2 personally. But good point. Go ahead, John.
So one of the big things, sorry, I want to rewind. I was going to say my point
also, welcome to Severo. I decided to just say it on air.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Welcome, Severo, welcome. So I really want to say where I'm watching this show from is that I have more secondhand nostalgia. I do know that a lot of things you see in any episode could technically maybe point to an earlier episode of a different season or a different series. And so I know that exists, but I don't know it. But so that's what I mean. It's I know it exists. And because I know it exists, and because I know that there is such a massive source material, I hold shows like this to a higher standard. It's like when it comes to things like Altered Carbon or even Jack Reacher, you don't have a lot of film to go back to and rewatch in a hot minute to double check to make sure that your images line up, to make sure that your magics line up, to make sure that your powers line up, all that stuff. But Star Trek does. It's literally only on the telly before it was on the books. So if you're going to be writing in that universe, writing what we've seen so far from New Trek is literally high schoolers being told to write a story about their favorite TV show, it's like obviously you remembered the space part.
Yeah, that's why I call Strange New Worlds Nick
like,
Jr. TOS.
Yeah, like you remembered all the things that like kind of made it cool, but you forgot literally all of the mechanics of how to write a good story. And I think that's like so disappointing for something that has so much to fall back on. Like you can literally copy and paste a lot of these episodes, change the characters out, change the races out, and suddenly it's a whole new Star Trek story, but basically the same paradigm that they're dealing with, the same character development arc that we've seen before. Because, you know, people are complex, but that doesn't mean that their character arcs are. Like, character development usually goes from like selfishness to selfless empathy, and that's about as much as we've got on the character growth spectrum as humans. So like, just find a fun way to write that. Don't pretend like you're rewriting the book just because you also learned that people haven't been giving women roles. Like, nothing about writing changed. Only who we write about changed. And I feel like that's what's been lost at that money scale.
Yeah. No, those are definitely...
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would also say this too. Like, look, some of the pieces that are kind of important to understand in like the lore end of Star Trek is TV shows are considered absolute hard canon. The books, like the novelizations, are considered what's called beta canon, where they are canon unless a show contradicts it at any point in the future. And the movies are considered part of the show canon. So everything that happens in a movie has happened in the shows. So that is, you know, like in the show verse, if you will. So that is important to remember if you're sitting down and trying to figure out, well, is this accurate or is this not?
Yeah, and we got fan mail from Severo, who writes in, honestly, after I bailed on season 2, I just watched... Oh, I think Corion's having connection issues again, so... Alright, gonna reread Severo's fan mail. Says, honestly, after I bailed on season 2, I just watched RLM review the rest of it. You were probably better off, and that was probably a lot more entertaining. Red Letter Media is another favorite source of mine that I enjoy on occasion.
I just love...
And...
Yeah, and to be honest, the books are pretty good. It's just I don't consider them anything other than, you know, works of fiction in the universe retelling events.
All right, well, that worked out. Yeah, no, it's...
Well, and that's what I mean, though, is like a lot of these, like, none of this writing would pass in a creative writing class. They would all say, like, yes, your characters are going somewhere, but they went nowhere. You need to really tighten that up, especially like a senior writing class in college. And so, like, that's what I grade this on, is like, you're not just some person who the industry accidentally found with a novel idea that is Star Wars. Like, George Lucas really came up with something unique in his whole other, like, let's just take humans there, but they have no connection to this whatsoever. And it was somehow a long time ago with more future weapons than it is now. So, like, all of your preconceptions are destroyed. That was an accident. That was Star Wars. Now, if we look at what came after all of that, like, that's the same writing, like the same quality as this new Trek stuff. Is it's like, you guys have all of the source material, all of the movies and videos and people to talk about this with and figure out the best way to do it. And instead you barely wrote a freshman level creative writing story.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into the meat and potatoes, since we've railed on New Trek a little bit longer than intended. So here's the story synopsis from IMDb. After receiving a distress call from Beverly Crusher, Jean-Luc Picard enlists help from generations old and new for one last adventure, a mission that will change Starfleet and his old crew forever. And that's it. That's the synopsis. It's pretty weak. I mean, that's kind of what happened.
That's about all the positive I could come up with from it.
Well, that's That's great. So, Corione, why don't you go ahead then and start us off with your
Okay.
thoughts.
Oh, okay. So let's start from the very beginning. We open on music from a song, "Flame in Your Heart," which is public domain music that was most commonly used in Fallout 3. I'm assuming they're using public domain music because either A, they couldn't get an artist that wanted to be associated with this, or B, they simply didn't have the budget. This series has been soft rebooted 3 times now, which tells me that twice they couldn't get it right, so now we're doing it a 3rd time. I have to ask something. Well, I have to ask something important, guys. Why is the future so dark? Like, look, I am going to now, use New Trek's lighting scheme in my show, or like on the show here.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to do the reviews like this from now on. Honestly, it only makes sense.
Until they learn how to find a light switch, I intend to do this whenever I review Star Trek Picard. It's just lights out on it. Okay?
Here's everything I hated about Star Trek Picard this week. Because it's dark and dreary and everybody hates you and everybody just wants to die.
Right. Now, look. So we then cut in on
Crusher's... I'm actually serious about this.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. All right.
If you want to. We don't have to.
Yeah, no, I'll dig it. All right. So, look. So, in Next Generation, Crusher's defining trait, Dr. Crusher's defining trait is no matter what, she cared about people. She loved life, life, and would do anything to protect or care for people, regardless of who they were, where they were. She was the quintessential, caring, loving, humanitarian doctor. Okay? And now she apparently doesn't anymore, and immediately goes for weapons instead of trying to get out of the problem, warp out, jump out, shield up, get away. Nope, we're going for the phaser rifle as the opening salvo. And I'm going to speak about that phaser rifle. Yo, a pump action phaser rifle? A pump action phaser rifle. Why? No, I need the answer to this. Why do we have a pump action energy weapon? I need the answer to this. I want to know why we have an energy weapon that is charged by batteries effectively that is now pump action for some reason. I want the answer to that. We also see clearly it is a Starfleet weapon. Okay? It has all the bells and whistles of a Starfleet weapon. This is important later on, so keep that in mind. All right? Now, I don't know about you, but a gun telling me its ammunition is depleted would be the most annoying thing you could do. In addition, I think the exact response would be, for me, well, why don't you announce it to the freaking room, you idiot?
Congratulations, you're about to die.
Right, congratulations, you have no way to shoot back at the people who are about to murder you. Way to go! Right, like, you might as well be
You're screwed!
Yeah, like, fuck, right? Now, let's move on.
We actually didn't get one of those in this episode. I was very happy about that.
Yeah, well, so let's move on now to the next. Now, I get that this is going to get me into, like, Star Trek nerd history here. But I literally sat down. I pulled out the Star Trek technical manuals. And I mean all of them, because I have them all, including the Hayes manual for a Constitution-class starship. I've got them all, people. I went through every section of warp field theory. Every single one. All of them say that if a ship is docked with you and you go to warp, one of 2 things happens. The warp bubble that your ship generates expands around the other ship and you take it along with you to warp. Or the warp bubble won't form and you can't go to warp while you've got a larger ship docked with you. Because the warp bubble just can't form around it. So then, how does this ship warp out, leaving the other ship behind? They've broken their own freaking rules. And that's my problem with Kurtzman Trek in a nutshell. We have gone from science fiction, where we take a core idea, like, I don't know, like, let's pick something that's a modern day audience theme that we like to explore, like racism, right? And we explore that through the lens of using other cultures, so that the writers have some grit going to say about those kind of issues.
Oh man, we're like in the middle of one of Corione's most epic rants. Corione, if you could hear me, unfortunately you're cutting out right now. So, man, the internet is not with us.
It's because I'm so pissed off. I'm like throwing out angry waves that are just screwing up the internet across the globe right now. That's how pissed I am. Okay, now
stop messing with the fabric of reality to get your point across.
After we deal with the stupidness, I can't help. But now, man, Kurtzman has pushed me too far to a level of rage.
Let go.
If I don't turn into the Hulk, we might be okay.
Let
but
go
even
of
the
your
lighting,
anger.
You never know, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay.
All right, I think you're good.
Then we cut to Beverly sending some sort of coded message to Picard. Yeah. Beverly sends some sort of coded message to Picard. Fine. I'm willing to play that game. Although I disagree with using the term codec, because that's not really what the term you would use in that case is. You'd be using an encrypted frequency, because you'd want the whole thing encoded, not just the message. But whatever. It's Kurtzman Trek, so we'll just go with it. He heard the term codec probably because he was trying to pirate some off episode of some other series, because he certainly didn't watch Trek. And he heard the term codec when his computer said, you don't have the right codec to watch this. So that became his new buzzword. Great. All right. So then Picard is like talking to the computer, and he gets smarmy with the computer. Like, dude, you haven't gotten smarmy with a computer ever in the history of Trek. And believe me, I looked. You've never once gotten sassy with a computer. But here we are, you getting sassy with a computer. Okay, so it's not Picard. It's crazy Steve from accounting pretending to be a Picard, but okay. So we then hear this message from Beverly, and he decides, okay, well, Beverly needs my help. And, even though I'm like basically running around with a walker, I might as well go help her because I'm some sort of commando in my like 150s, but why not? All right. So he meets Riker at a bar. All right. And he meets him at Guinan's bar. And they're talking about a souvenir Enterprise thing that they've got up for Fleet Day, and that nobody likes the fat one. So I actually have some context for this one. The model of the Enterprise D is actually the worst selling model kit in Star Trek lore. And there's a lot of reasons for this, and a lot of it has to do with the production quality of the model at the time. But the Constitution class, the Enterprise Zero, or the original, the A, the B,
1701.
Yeah, the 1701, the A, the B,
bloody A, bloody B, bloody
yeah.
E, but no bloody D.
Yeah, but the D actually sold the worst out of all of them. I thought that was actually cute. I will give them credit for that.
I've always been a bigger fan of the E myself. Now I'm a fan of the F, which we get to see soon.
Right. Like, I'm fine with that. I am not going to argue that. Points for a meta-textual comment. You've earned them. You get them.
Well, and it works in the context of the episode, though, too, because it's basically, think of it like the new generation looking back at the old. Well, of course the kids don't like the fat ones. That's old tech. That's an old ship that's way outdated. That's been outpaced by the Sovereign class. I mean, sure, it was a cool warship in, the Dominion War. Shit.
I would say it even just goes to like realistic life about architecture. Like every new architect wants to outpace the old, and after a while, the next generation of architects are looking at the newest high rollers, like they're the best thing, and the Galaxy class didn't work. But personally, I think the reason why the Galaxy Quest never like hit with me was like it was the most donut of all of them, or not donut, but egg.
Oh, dude, it looks like a cruise ship in space. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't
That's
look like
what
a
they were
combat.
going for too.
But as a kid, I wanted warfighters, not cruise ships.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you didn't want to be running around on the Love Boat. You wanted to be running around on the Enterprise, right? I got you. Okay? Or like the Eisenhower or something. I'm there. Now, we've got apparently Riker and Deanna are now fighting, right? Because, you know, in Kurtzman's universe, nothing can be happy. Nothing is permitted happiness or joy.
That's why I turned my lights off.
Right, exactly. Now, we then cut to Riker's plan, which is to get them onto the Titan and basically Shanghai the crew into getting them out to go meet Beverly. You know what? That's not a half bad idea. I'll buy that one. Okay? And they've drummed up this idea of a surprise inspection to get them on board. Sure. Okay. I mean, you could see something like that happening. Now, I'm going to say this, and you know, the Coast Guard gentleman and the Marine in the room may disagree with me on this, but hear me out.
Well, you tell me to, I will.
Well, whenever a flag officer who was not stationed on the ship came on the ship, it's always supposed to be a big friggin' deal. Okay? Everybody is got to be right and tight and ready to show off in full parade and military dress and all that important stuff. Well, we've got one freaking dressed right in the because Picard,
You're right, Corion. I am going to disagree with you, but that's just because you don't get to get your piece in. All right. While we wait for...
Well, and then we got the captain complete... Okay.
Yeah, still...
Yeah, am I back now?
Now I think you are.
Still bad?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
How many fingers am I holding up?
I can hear you. All right. So then we've got a Vulcan salute.
Delay. All right, cool.
So I guess 3.14. So
that's a good clip. I actually heard it.
Whenever flag
too.
officers are on board a ship.
Yeah.
Nice. So whenever flag officers come on board a ship, it's supposed to be a big deal. But they treat these flag officers like crap. I don't know how often you had a flag officer on board, but I remember hearing stories of if by somebody else, somebody else orders to make.
All right, unfortunately, Corio, it's really bad. Yeah, you're cutting out way too much now. It's getting robotic, and unfortunately, cutting in the discussion. I don't know if you can reset or something, but
understood what he was going for, so I
yeah. So if you want to type in the comments, Corion, to confirm real quick what it is you're trying to say, and then we can try to get you back on the show. We'll see if we get it stabilized.
So he was talking about the idea of, you know, a retired flag officer and an active commander or captain coming onto the ship, and about how their welcome party was the most weak version of such a welcome party. And to me, I kind of liked that if this new captain was gonna matter, but I kind of feel like he's not. But like this new captain like really felt like the professionalism of Kirk and Picard.
Yeah,
like,
all right. Let's catch up on some fan mail real quick, please.
Yeah, for sure.
And then yeah, I've actually got something to say on this. So, Several writes in, says, the intro is really the only thing that bothered me about the episode. The pump action was strange. The answer is it's because it looks cool, I guess. LOL. Yeah, I'm looking forward to an explanation if we get one on that. Glenda says, that's like those ATMs in North Austin that sound like you won a jackpot when you withdraw cash. Ah, yeah. So, reference to our, in reference to the gun telling you that you're out of ammo. Severo writes in, as for Crush, I have to hear more about her story and how and why she is where she is and why she's being hunted. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm willing to give this thing about 3, maybe 4 episodes, to gauge where the story's going before I start getting too harsh. So for me, I've got expectations set to 0, so I'm actually enjoying it right now.
Okay, guys, can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear you, and if you just want to stay camera off, if that's easier.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try that for a little bit.
That's fine. We got 3 of our faces up to hold your weight, so.
Yeah, fair. So yeah,
Corione's now gone super new Trek, and that now he doesn't even have a camera.
Yeah, there we go. Right. Look, my piece on this is whenever a flag officer was ever on a ship, anytime I've ever heard of it, and there wasn't appropriate quarters for them, one of the officers would graciously bunk somewhere else and let them have their room because that is the respectful thing to do, right? That is, that's the honor tradition here of having a high-ranking guest. This is like a level of disrespect that would be nobody would put up with under any circumstances. It wouldn't have happened on Picard's Enterprise by far. They would have found a room if needed. Hell, there is a Deep Space Nine episode where Worf literally goes through the protocol on what's supposed to happen.
Well, so to me, I think that was I thought that was actually clever writing in this episode where the captain of this new Titan, is it a Titan Enterprise? I didn't know.
No, it's a Titan. The ship is the USS Titan. When Riker gets his own command, his command is the USS Titan.
Okay, so it's the USS Titan. So this guy I think he honestly is what Riker was written to be. He was meant to be a professional Kirk, somebody who could legitimately command a ship at any time, but he respected authority. And that's what made him such an awesome character in the Next Generation, was because Picard was never going down with the away party. And so having Riker as the second in command, that's basically a professional Kirk. It made the show fun. And I think that's a lot what this guy represented. But if Riker became a captain and we got to see that, because what did he do with the surprise inspection? He put them in the worst spot possible. So if it really was meant to be an official surprise inspection, they would have run through the chain of are you serious? This is how you're going to treat your inspectors? Instead, they just graciously accepted the accommodations oh, maybe they are playing the system. Maybe this isn't an official surprise inspection and I need to keep my eye on them, which he didn't. But that's kind of what I got was this guy was double checking to make sure the inspectors were legit and they weren't. And he just also overlooked, he didn't have a backup plan for if they weren't,
Yeah,
I don't know, but there is one other piece I want to talk about, and that is Raffi. As a rule, in tradecraft, you never stick a CI under any circumstances who has a history of addiction in a scenario where they will be put near an addictive substance. There is absolutely zero reason to do this, given the breadth of most security organizations out there. And what did they do? They had a junkie pretend to be a junkie and put them around real drugs. This is asking for trouble. This is asking for compromise. On top of that, you don't need to protect the identity of a handler. You need to protect the identity of a CI. So why is the handler either an AI or a crazy voice-changing software? This makes no sense. This is the exact opposite of how you run a security organization. And I guess the only other piece I can point to is, okay, Crusher's got another kid. We're supposed to think it's Picard's kid. Fine. I'd even buy that. I'd even go with that. I was so goddamn mad, I just threw my hands up in disgust.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a response for any of those points because I think those are valid questions to keep in mind with follow-on episodes, and hopefully we get answers, and I think we will. Actually.
There is one that we don't get an answer to. Remember the pump action phaser that reports when you're out of ammo to everyone in the room?
Yeah.
Well, when Riker is checking the disintegration marks left by the bodies that Crusher had vaporized, because of course she's not using stun anymore because, she's a doctor and cares about all life. Riker mentions that this isn't Starfleet issue, but we clearly saw it was a Starfleet issue rifle.
So it's probably been modified then, and that might be why it's a pump action dealie. I don't know. I think the answers lie in follow-on episodes, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But
they had fucking better.
All right. I'm gonna read Severo's fan mail, and then it's my turn to speak. Severo writes in, says, Shaw does not like Picard. That is why he is doing what he is doing. Shaw sees Picard as a troublemaker and who brings chaos. I see Shaw as somewhat like Edward Jellicoe. So I actually see Shaw as who Picard was in The Next Generation. Now, I know that's a little bit weird to think about, but the reason I see that is because, well, I identified with Shaw in this scenario because I think if I had stayed in the Coast Guard, that's probably how I would have ended up as a captain. He's not looking at this like, oh yeah, these guys are reputable, they're legendary. He's looking at this from the perspective of, I've had this ship for 5 years. I've had nothing go wrong with it for 5 years. And here come these two screwballs, more or less, that have destroyed 2 Enterprises, or at least destroyed one and severely damaged another, that have just been through all kinds of adventurous stuff that, while we did see them go on adventures in The Next Generation, they were very much under control of all those situations. Now, I went on a sort of Twitter rant, so to speak, about the character of Picard, and that the characterization actually does make sense for where he's at, because Generations does a really bad job of just glossing over the trauma that Picard went through in that film. It's like by the end of the movie, so within a matter of hours, he's found out that his brother and his nephew are dead, and dead by fire. And so he's has to live with the fact that he's now the last of the Picards. He didn't have any kids. It can be an impactful thing for someone to realize they're the last of their family bloodline. He loses his ship. He ends up burying one of the most legendary captains of all time. And then at the end of the movie, we're like, oh, we'll get another Enterprise. Everything's going to be fine. And it's all great. And everything's in a happy bow. Okay, that kind of trauma is going to screw somebody in ways that, only life can screw somebody. And so it actually makes more sense in the follow-on TNG films why he is the way that he is. He hates the Borg because he's already been assimilated by the Borg. He knows what's coming. He doesn't want to go through that again. He doesn't. The problem with the Picard in the movies is we don't get the episode that we did after Best of Both Worlds with him. We don't get the episode Family, which is arguably even better than Best of Both Worlds because it really does a great job of following up that experience of what it was like as a drone. Instead, we get, happy-go-lucky. We end everything on a happy note. Everything's great. And so I don't know if that was the original intention of the character back then in the movies. I just know that by the time we get to where we are now, we got to look at this from the perspective of Shaw. Shaw doesn't see the Next Generation Picard. He doesn't see the boring, by the book. He doesn't know who that person once existed. He only knows legendary Picard. He only knows crash the Enterprise into the Scimitar Picard. He sees these guys coming on and he's like, this is the type of attention and bad juju I don't want on my ship. So what does he do? The ultimate power play. He has the commander greet them at the door to basically say, yeah, I already know that you guys are not legit. He's pretty much putting them in their place right out of the gate. When he doesn't wait for them for dinner, he's basically saying, no, I'm the captain here. I eat. It's all psychological power plays that he's doing. And then the final one being, yeah, here's your crap accommodations. I don't like you guys. I really don't want you on my ship. And no, we're not going to go gallivanting off to save your friend because I have other things to do. I didn't get to this chair by parading around heroes whenever they come on my ship. And like I said, well, just let me finish real quick, please. And then it's all yours. What now, a lot of fans are going to be turned off by that because it's like, well, how dare they disrespect our heroes? And it's like, the show isn't written from the perspective of us, the fans. It's written from the perspective of, you guessed it, the next generation. It's written from the perspective of Relics, which, by the way, Relics is one of the best episodes of the Next Generation, and we basically see Scotty get put through what we're seeing Picard and Riker go through now, and yet it's considered one of the most highly acclaimed episodes of all time. And I think that this is why we need to stick with the show, is because I think we're going to get that satisfactory, here's where the Relics come through and save the day for everybody kind of ending. So,
well, I want to add to your point, because I think a lot of what you're saying actually, like like proof of concept makes sense in terms of like the military as a whole, is that like Shaw grew up hearing the legendary experiences of Picard and thinking that's the greatest thing ever. And then he was working as, you know, an ensign and then a lieutenant and all the way up to commander and captain and all the way up, right? But throughout his entire experience, he was probably told Picard he's a wild card. You do not act like him in real life. Like, he's a 1 in a million captain. In real life, this is how you run your ship. In real life, like, he's doing his thing. It is heroic, yes. Give him all of his praise, but also, like, that's not what you want to be a part of. When you're a part of Starfleet, you want to be a part of the nice, easygoing, formal trade negotiations where everything goes diplomatically smooth and everything's perfectly organized, and that's it. And I think that's like a nice aside to Lower Decks, in terms of like how the Lower Decks characters are a lot more like us. Like, no, we joined Starfleet and we love Starfleet and everything Star Trek for the adventures. We want to see those ships go on those wild adventures. And we watch those characters like deal with that conundrum of like, oh, those adventures also cost lives. Those adventures also lose friends. And I think this is like, Shaw is the perfect example of all of the nerd captains we've seen in Lower Decks.
I'm going to say this, and I think this sums it up, because I think Next Generation said it better than I ever could. If you wanted it safe and routine and organized, then perhaps you should have stayed home under your bed. If you know, space is wondrous, with pleasures both exciting and gross, but it's not for the timid. And a dude like Shaw is timid, and that's what annoys me.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's
that's the majority of Marine officers I met.
Yeah, same with all the captains, and I mean, I served under some great captains and whatnot, but at the same time, I also served under ones that were exactly like Shaw, that it's all about the book and it's all about just getting the job done no matter the cost. And it's like, it's unfortunately, Shaw is basically the anchor of realism in this show right now. He's pretty much, like I said, he's coming into this. Like, I get the quote and I get what you're saying, and there was probably a time when Shaw believed in that. But then the politics start to pile up. The paperwork starts to get the best of you. Then you have to start behaving a certain way and kissing certain asses in order to advance. Like,
yeah, he's a picture-perfect modern-day...
Picard didn't have to do any of that. That's the other thing people forget, is Picard got his promotion because of what happened on the Stargazer. He didn't have to file paperwork or actually climb the ranks like you're supposed to. He did it because of circumstance.
He's the picture-perfect peacetime officer. The ones that get out of West Point, get their command. They're like, yeah, I have all the heroism, but I'm also a man, and we do things the right way, the politically right way. Oh, I'm just as lazy as all the rest.
I get an automatic promotion in 18 months. I'm not screwing that up. And that's basically like Shaw is trying to get a desk job as an admiral. That's what he wants. That's what he's clearly going for. And he, you know, the last thing he needs after 5 years of pristine perfection are these two, like I said, heroic jackasses coming in and ruining that. And that's the perspective that it is. And I'm not necessarily saying you have to agree with it. I get it.
Also,
we want. I get your perspective,
using,
but
because he is a perfect example of a peacetime officer, and his gripe is exactly what the story is, the call to action, the break. Like, if anything, this could be our chance to see Shaw become the next Picard. Like, they could actually be creating this character. I hope they do. Honestly, I think that's what you should do with legacy characters. But
I honestly hope that what happens to Shaw is his by the book attitude gets him killed. I'm really at that point. I'm sorry, but you guys can say that he is an example of an officer you have seen. I'm not going to disagree with that. What I am going to say is it does make him a monumental jackass, and I really don't like him as a character.
Well,
and I don't want to spend time with him.
I can attest that as an enlisted personnel, I'm on your team on this one. I'm just saying he actually is well written. He's accurate, but also...
Yeah, I'm not here to convince you to like Shaw. I could talk praises about plenty of other COs that I didn't like personally, but I can still recognize their good job and whatnot that they did. But
I didn't like Jellicoe, but I respected the hell out of him for the job he did.
And I think we're gonna get a little bit of that, and that's why I reference Relics as well. Is when you watch Relics, when you get about that point in the episode where Scotty says, "Shut this bloody thing off," like, there's always a knot in my stomach when I watch that, because it's sad. It's, here he is, this heroic engineer of the 23rd century of the Enterprise, and he doesn't know what to do with the new technology. He's lost, he's confused, and now all he's left to do is just find happiness at the end of a bottle. And it's so hard to watch, and you're like, this is how we're treating a legacy character? We're gonna bring him into the future and then, kick him into the dirt by the next generation and talk about how he's irrelevant and doesn't matter? But then what happens by the end of the episode? We get a redemption. We get the moment of, oh, hey, turns out knowing some of your old knowledge is a good idea. And that's what I think we're going to get with this season, we just need to stick with it, and it's going to take time. And I think Shaw's going to go through some kind of redemption, something or other, maybe. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he proves that, nope, by the book is the right way, and he ends up, the circumstances line up, and that's just how life goes. Sometimes the shitheads win. It sucks, but it's life. I mean, even Picard would say, you can do everything right and still lose.
I get that, but I am practicing the philosophy when it comes to Picard that hope is the first step on the road to disappointment.
Well, I like Garrick's better. On the contrary, I always hope for the best. Experience, unfortunately, has taught me to expect the worst. It's a little more of a balanced one that I've always liked.
Fair.
So, to catch up on some things, several writes in. Look at it from Shaw, though. He has a mission and orders. Here comes two guys throwing a wrench into that. I think Shaw is going to be redeemed. If they do that with Shaw, I'm going to stop watching. Oh, probably referring to killing them. And says, don't forget, most people hated Captain Jellicoe at first as well. He just had a different ways of doing things that in the end showed to be effective. Yeah, like I said, I think we're going to get that. I think it's just coming on strong because, we're told all this hype about how great season 3 is, and it starts exactly the same as the rest of New Trek, and it's like, what the are we watching? But they clearly sent 6 episodes out for a reason, and like I said, I haven't had any reason to doubt the credibility of the Critical Drinker, Dave Cullen, or Gary from Nerdrotic. I think we just need to ride it out, and, we're not exactly big enough to get advanced screenings just yet. We're getting there. But even so, I think I kind of want to do the weekly. I like our weekly formula. It works for me, and I think it works for our viewers as well. But with that, I think we've touched on everything we need to. I think...
Wait.
Oh, no, wait. H. Marie needs to get her 2 cents. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm okay sitting this one out. I'm just kind of along for the ride, but... I'm enjoying Next Gen, or I should say the episode Next Gen. I grew up watching Next Generation with my dad. He had every single episode, every single season on VHS. Like, we had a closet that was just a wall of Next Gen VHS. And that's what we would watch. And I thoroughly enjoyed that show. And while this episode, yes, does have the darker lighting, does have some aspects that nobody likes. It did somewhat slightly echo some of the next gen aspects with the way they had some of the characters, but yeah, with Shaw, I probably would have done the same thing. Why the hell are you two on my ship? He probably already had an inspection for, what was it, Frontier Day coming up, and he already called all their BS before they probably even got on the ship. He's like, why are they coming on here? It's a retired admiral with a captain who doesn't have an actual ship. What are they doing? So he was already probably a little bit, suspectful of the entire situation. But so far, I like it. I went into it with zero expectations, as you guys heard, and it's piqued my interest. It's got a little bit of a mark on the board, but I'm not going to give it much more than that at the moment.
I will say one thing that I will give absolute praise to, that is absolutely nailing it on this show so far, is the Fallout 3 reference in the beginning of this part, but the rest of the soundtrack, holy crap! I was a little excited when the end credits hit, not just because the episode was over, but because it was like the First Contact theme as the end credits. What brilliant. That was fantastic. I'm now ready to watch the next episode all the way through.
I enjoyed the credits. I thought that was such an awesome version of credits.
I did like using Star Trek 2 as a reference for that. That was really cool. I hope that we get an actual intro though. That was kind of my one little, I was like, oh, we didn't do a full intro.
The end credits with the Final Frontier, like I actually watched the credits because I liked the scene by scenes, the way they were like falling out and they were jumping to different parts of the tech that like you couldn't read what any of the monitors said or what they did, but like that's always been the case. We just like seeing the cool pictures that they said are the monitors. And that's I like that at the end credits.
Yeah. So yeah, the soundtrack's really good in my opinion, and like I said, I really enjoy. I hope we get a proper intro this week, and I do hope we get a proper. Well, like I said, I do really enjoy the end credits. I think that was a really smart call to use the First Contact theme for the outro. Any last quick final thoughts?
Pump, action, phaser.
That tells you and everyone around you you're out of ammo.
Pump, action, phaser.
All right, say pump action again, and I'm going to have to restrict the age on the stream. All right, turning back to...
reload, 14 seconds to reload.
Turning back to, well, I can't really say happier times. It's kind of like the Kurtzman universe, just set 100 years in the past. The latest struggle of 1923. First we open up with a shot of wintertime, and I'm over that crap, so I didn't like that. And from there we get overall I liked it. I did. Really good episode. We got some fantastic divine retribution. As I'm sure, Corione, you were probably just screaming praises the whole time that the Catholics were finally getting their dues. And
look.
Visibly giddy.
I am not going to say that I enjoyed watching priests get the crap kicked out of them for, not being priestly. I would never say that. Because I don't condone violence as, being somebody, especially when you're in your robes and acting as an authority for the church. I would never condone someone getting beaten like that. I would laugh at them for their stupidity routinely, for thinking that, years in a seminary is going to prepare them for life on the prairie with people that are used to that rough kind of lifestyle, and thinking that they can run roughshod over those particular individuals. I would laugh myself silly for it, but I would never be happy that a priest was hurt, my friends. That would just be wrong.
A good priest, I would agree. These three jackasses got what they had coming. I mean, every jackass in that church has got what they had coming, and rightly so. And so it's
somebody who is I don't encourage violence, but I encourage taking care of business when business needs to be taken
Oh,
care of.
I'm a firm believer in
And
all-out defensive violence. If you think that
see, I that's what I mean.
yeah,
Like,
self-defense.
I don't encourage it, and that's the end statement. I don't stop it. I don't tell it that
Yeah,
it's not
I
appropriate.
wouldn't encourage it, but I do
discourage
enjoy
it
watching
either.
karma happen in real time.
Yeah, that's what I
Exactly.
mean. I'm not gonna be the one to say fight, but I will stand there watching.
Now every time one of them was getting manhandled by one of the priests, I was like, come on, show, don't let me down, show. The show didn't let me down. Oh man, it was intense.
Boot knife, where is boot knife?
Go ahead, H. Marie, you had a thought.
Like I really liked the way it happened, and the show did a great job of like getting the karma the way it needed to be had. But at the same time, every time hands were put on the Native Americans, I was just like, boot knife.
No, we did lose someone though. We lost Hank.
Yeah.
So sad.
So someone did.
Wait.
We did lose someone to the priest, unfortunately.
I don't know. Because Hank was shot roughly at the same distance he shot the priest that shot him at.
I'm pretty sure we lost him, sadly.
I want to say we did too, but also I feel like it was enough of a close off that we could see Hank getting not the treatment that Dutton got. Right? Like they're trying to bring him back, but it's just not working. Whereas Dutton was given the space to rest and a nice, comfortable bed to rest in with climate-controlled housing. Whereas Hank may not get that, and so we could watch him succumb to the winter, which is depressing. But I feel like they gave room for that.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, the episode overall was good. For all the things this show's been doing right, once again, we had some more softcore porno take place. This time, well, not that it really matters who's doing what, I guess. It's porn's porn at that point.
Well,
so,
okay.
It just is what it is. I mean, like I said, I just wish for shows like this, they just give you the skip nudity option. You know, if you want to watch the scene, you can, and if you don't have to. I think that would be a fair compromise for those of us that are fine with implication and want to move on to more gunfights and priests getting their dues. Or
technically do, because I think the sex is part of the writing, and I agree it is getting to be too much, but at the same time they do give you the skip option. It's called TVMA. Like if
that is the most weak rating system. That's even worse than the
Well, okay, guys.
That's the trade. Is like we're not asking them to regulate to oblivion. We're just trying to ask them to regulate the kids out of the room, and then you get what they wrote, whether you like it or not. That's what they wrote.
Well, okay. Let me interject a little bit here. I can understand from your Christian upbringings that the nudity would be a bit of a concern, considering the sheer volume, brevity, and magnificence that is nudity in pagan environments in general. It doesn't faze me at all. I kind of go, okay, see this. Look,
you're cutting out again, Corione. Sorry. And I get what you're saying, like, and I agree. It's not so much.
Yeah.
You there?
Well, here, let me see if I got this. Yeah, I'm here. Let me say this. Like, we know bankers are evil, but we're so used to in Western civilization being like, well, yeah, he's a banker, he's evil by default, right? But they wanted to show that this banker was not just evil, but morally depraved. And that's what that scene was about. It was setting the tone for this character that this isn't just your average bad guy. This is a special sort of bad guy.
That
right
was actually not the scene that bothered me as much. It was the one earlier when the guy got arrested. When they're like
the two ladies in the bed together there.
And they're gonna start. It's like, oh yeah, here we go, starting up that's what I meant by the softcore porno. Now, as far as that sequence went, yes,
same idea. It's to show his depravity is not just based on monetary, but on a failing of ethical failing. as
Right.
well.
And also to show that his version of moral depravity is not as bad as it could be.
Yeah.
Right.
The other
Which is
scene
what
I
makes
actually at first was very disturbed by, which was the point. But looking back at it, it was actually a fairly clever bait and switch, and it didn't linger too long. It was about, it established what it needed to establish, and then we moved on. So I actually didn't feel as bothered by that particular. I mean, I was bothered, but I think the way I was supposed to be bothered.
Exactly. And that's kind of my point is those scenes I feel overall were supposed to bother you to get the point across on how terrible a human being these two trash human beings are, and that they're trash human beings in two different ways.
Right, and I would only say that, like, my only hang up with it is that every episode has been at least one sex scene that wasn't exactly necessary. Like, these two were very necessary, where all of the rest kind of now feel like they were filler content, where this was like actually choreographed writing for setting you up for the hook and then punching you in the like morality. And that was good. Whereas all the rest are like, okay, they got married and had sex. Oh, they weren't married and had sex. I didn't care either way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm so sick of Spencer and Alex. I'm just over those two as a whole.
Okay, but consider this.
They did finally get a conflict in their relationship.
Yeah. Okay, but consider this with Spencer and Alex. Whenever we've seen a sex scene between the two of them, it's been a relatively wholesome, consensual affair. We're seeing how love is supposed to be. It adds additional context to what we got in this episode to show what it shouldn't be according to the morals of the time.
I hear you.
That's definitely something to ponder. And I mean, we know that the show's...
None of this is lowering my rating on a 7. Like, this show is still full-on 7s across the board. So that, if anything, these gripes are because I have nothing else to gripe about.
Yeah, fair.
Maybe some, more tasteful camera angles or whatever to get the point across, just to consider. I mean, it doesn't, you don't constantly, like, I'm watching MASH and I'm realizing that a lot of the gore in that show is based on what they sort of allude to, because you don't actually see anything, because that would have been too much for television at the time. And so that's really where it's like, just be creative with your storytelling. But at the same time, the show is very intelligent, especially with the scene at the dinner table when they were reading the newspaper. Like, once again, the show reminds us that 100 years later, nothing's changed.
Bro,
oh my gosh.
On the newspaper haven't changed, including the railroad part.
And here I was going to say, I can't recall the last time a president of the United States released a couple of bears on the White House lawn. Although I'll admit I might have stroked out during Trump's presidency a little bit, and Obama's. Well, so if Obama released a bunch of bears on the White House lawn and I missed it, please inform me, because I'd be very curious.
I think the in this case, bears refers to something else in modern times.
You know what? And if that's the case, I would love to read that news article too.
But I mean, Helen Mirren,
Pride is an awesome place, and weird shit happens during Pride. I'll give you that, but I don't think it's happened that weird.
Helen Mirren was asking the right question. She's like, why? I don't care about bears in the White House. Why does this matter? What are they not telling us? That's what we need to be asked. I'm just like, yeah, that's what I've been saying. Oh man, nothing's changed. It's all the same. Also, as much as things change, they stay the same.
Harrison Ford's representation of the issue of well, aren't you in government too, trying to regulate how this goes? And his response was, yeah, because the only people that are going to care about this family are this family, and our job is to do that. That's the same thing that the other miner's doing, except his family is one person. That's the same thing that the Vanderbilts did. It's the same thing that Coolidge did. It's literally, that logic is why the corruption is justified. I'm protecting my family at least, until your family's not protected.
Yeah. No, I still have high praises for this show. I mean, I still can't recommend it to grandma, but it is what it is. And that's why I bring up these issues too. And yes, it's not necessarily that am I bothered by it? I mean, I'm bothered by anything I look at. It's just part of the human condition. It's really just, it's a matter of giving the honest review like we always do on this show. And I'd rather our viewers, if they're, hesitant on a show like this or whatever, that we could just say, yeah, heads up. Here's porn scene here, porn scene there.
Well, and not just that, but it's also like you said honest review. You honestly have a gripe about that as a personal individual with personal gripes.
Yeah, and that's
things
cool.
that exist in this universe. So that is the honest review. But also, like you just said, it doesn't really denigrate from the show. It just denigrates who you pitch it to.
Yeah, and look, 100%, I respect your opinion and position on it. I offer a counter viewpoint, but you're completely entitled to feel it's a bit much, and I respect that. And I do think that, look, were this show put together pre-Game of Thrones, I absolutely think you're right. We would be getting much different camera angles as to what was going on. I 100% think that would be the case. Or at the very least, we would be getting different costume design to better cover certain things. But I think you're right on that. I just feel a little differently about it.
Yeah, no, and I think I don't
know. I'm willing to bet that if my grandma watched, she'd be laughing and giggling about the whole thing personally, right? So who knows?
Yeah, I wouldn't show this to my grandma, but I would show it to my son's grandma. If that puts it into perspective, it's like maybe 2 generations too far, but not this like the generation before me too far.
Oh yeah, Gen X can definitely handle it.
I guess that's the best way to put it. Yeah, I think that's the number one piece to take away from this is it's good, but know your audience.
Exactly. That's exactly what I put it. So, I
think the next best piece to take away from that, I wouldn't show it to the generation that lived through it, even though they know that that's what they lived through. But I would show it to the generations that actually understand how the world works.
Right?
Well, you can't show it to anyone who lived through it because they're all dead.
Biden and Carter are still alive. They were in the but Carter was 1924.
He was born in 24?
1923. So anybody who's over 94 right now, or anybody who's over 98 right now, was alive in 1923.
Yeah, but they weren't alive in the sense that they were aware. That's like saying, I was born in 99, I'm a 90s baby. No, you're not.
Right, but what I'm saying is this culture hasn't changed. Like the idea of how prostitutes are treated are still treated this way, see Epstein. And like, I wouldn't show it to the generation that lived even remotely close to these events, even though they are accurate tellings of these events. Which goes to show which generations are more focused on knowledge and which generations are focused on pomp and circumstance.
Pomp and circumstance sells more flags.
Well, I would just say this. If the person is in the 90 to 100 bracket, they can watch whatever the heck they want to watch at that age. If they can see the TV, props to them.
And they're probably going to anyway, because, if there's anything I've learned about old people over the years is that when they start to get closer to death, they start to care less about the things they thought were important and just tend to throw caution to the wind. And, you only get one shot at this life, so far be it from me to tell you what not to do in it. Except respect people's consent. That's all I gotta say. Yeah, I think that just about covers it. I'm really sad that this show ends next week, this week. Unfortunately, we're already at that final episode. Does anybody else, by the way, get PTSD watching the opening credits and they show the tugboat for that one frame? Because when I was watching, I saw it and I'm like, oh god, all I can think of is the ghost ship gonna come and just take that thing out again. Oh man, that was so So well done, because it creeps me out to this day.
The flyby of the ship that they were on for a second made me think it was the tugboat or the ghost ship again. I was like, no!
Oh.
You know, for Halloween, I'm going to have to dress up as the ghost ship just to mess with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Orville Nation says, hey guys, thanks for the invite. Sorry I could not make it. Yeah, it's okay. How's your Twitter ban going? Because we miss you on Twitter. The voice of one of the voices of reason, so to speak, that we're also trying to be, or at least as best
One
we
of the
can.
nicer people to talk to and hear from in general.
Yeah, I mean, we can send you an invite right now if you want to jump on the panel. Of course, we're done talking about Picard, so... Anyway, next time, Orville Nation, we always got a chair warm for you whenever you're ready to sit on our panel and share your thoughts on stuff. And I mean, we got plenty of episodes of Picard to catch up on, so... or to follow up on. But with that, I think we'll go ahead and head to... Speaking of Star Trek, we'll now move to our last segment for the night. And that is, of course, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Orville Nation says, you guys are becoming a great voice. Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you, because you've got the connections. And you've been nothing but a shameless promoter of the Writer Brothers, and we do appreciate it, as well as other good content creators that you should all go subscribe to if you want.
Yeah, when a great voice says, hey, we're becoming a great voice, that's, you know, being lifted up by giants. That's really means a lot to us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we only did one episode of DS9 because I knew that Picard was going to be a big segment, and man, 1923 was quite good. But this episode is also probably going to eat up a lot of discussion time, because I think there's a lot to unpack and discuss here. So, I'll go ahead and get right into the synopsis for Deep Space Nine's Necessary Evil. Quark is on Bajor negotiating with a woman, Palara. She wants him to retrieve a strongbox from the station, hidden behind a panel in the chemist's room. A man is secretly listening to their conversation. With the help of Rom, Quark has no problem finding the box, but his curiosity makes him open it. He finds a list of Bajoran names. Before he is able to copy it, he gets shot by a man, the same man who'd been listening in while Quark spoke with Palra. While Dr. Bashir tries to save Quark's life, Odo questions Rom. He tells him about the chemist's room, and Odo is immediately reminded of a murder case several years ago. He was forced by Gul Dukat to investigate the murder of the owner of a shop, Vatrick. His wife, Palra, accused a mistress of the murder. So, there is a lot of... there's a lot that this episode... Like, this is definitely one you cannot hit skip on a rewatch. This one establishes basically a couple of our main characters that we end up following throughout maybe throughout the rest of the series. Maybe they die by the end of the season. I don't know. It's really fascinating that the episode's title encompasses so much, because it's not just the implications with what happens with Kira, it's also the fact that without Gul Dukat, Odo would not be chief of security on the station. And we all know that Dukat is not the most savory of people in the galaxy. And yet, he puts one of the best men in the best positions.
Well, it goes even deeper than that. It was absolutely necessary for the woman to get the list to blackmail the people on the list because she was out of money. It was absolutely necessary for Quark to be involved in this little organization because profit is his religion, right? It was absolutely necessary for, Kira to do what she needed to do involving her actions in the underground. Everybody's actions were not exactly from the angels, shall we say, but they were all absolutely necessary in the time they had. And I think that is one of the most deep ways to look at this. There are so much necessary evil in this that you have trouble finding the particular good in the whole situation. And that's what makes a really good hard-boiled film noir story like this, because make no mistake, This is a film noir detective episode, right? We had the femme fatale, we had the broken alibis, we had the dark setting because, you know, we're on a theme of.
You're cutting out again. But yeah, I heard what you said about the dark setting. That's literally what I thought watching this episode. I'm like, oh, it's all dark and dingy because the Cardassian is here, and it looks like New Trek. The thing about the lighting, though, like, as much as people, yes, they could do to turn it up about 20 or 30%. I will agree with that. But the reason why things were also so bright in the TOS and TNG and I guess even DS9 eras, and Voyager, was because the cameras that they had to use at the time could only they had to be brighter because the cameras can only pick up so much light in just normal lighting environments. That's why studio lights, stage lights are so.
Wait, it's worse than that. I've been doing a lot of study on this, and it turns out
Then I'm gonna shut up.
The main reason they had to do it was because the camera, the director, the screen that the director was looking at was always coming in dark. Like, we have always been doing the same saturation for all the screens the whole time, but the reason that they've always been upping the lighting for the most cases is because the director's screen was always underperforming while he was directing. But now I think the reason why we're getting these super dark screens is because the directors are rewatching and editing in 4K, 8K, 64K, whatever they can get in the director's room. And so it doesn't look that dark to them. So it's like they're doing the same thing back.
Yeah, guys, while we've got a few seconds here, I'm going to drop because my internet is playing tricks on the universe. I love you guys. I love you all. I love you all in the chat. Take care, everybody.
Yep. Thank you, Corione. Hopefully we'll,
Yeah, I'll yell at my ISP for like the next hour and a half. Take care,
good.
Guys.
Yeah.
Love you, brother.
Yep. So the lighting, of course, that's the big thing. That's the big complaint. And I mean, at a time, I get it because, yeah.
To me, it's a question of editing. Like, if your material is now good enough to finally be able to see in the darkness when you couldn't, make sure to scale it back for the people that don't have your equipment. Like, that's it. Like, just have one of your editors go back and go through and be like, hey, we got to bump the lighting on these because if you watch this on a standard HD TV, it's not going to look good.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah. So that's why we do have a more brighter, optimistic future, is because, well, it was necessary for the time and technology. And yes, like I said, we could do to increase the lighting about 20-30% on New Trek, but I don't think going back to full, bright lights in your face, I don't, if we do that, yeah, no, the Orville does that.
I think it's just on the dark scenes. Like, if you are going to be in a dark, dingy bar, just, bump the lighting a little bit so we can see the whole bar.
Yeah. The Orville does the brighter scenes, and I think the Orville needs to keep that as their thing at this point, because if we just make Star Trek into what the Orville is doing now, then, yes, the Orville is definitely more Star Trek than Star Trek at this time, I'll agree, but at the same time, the Orville is also its own unique thing on its own. It's its own show. It's better Star Trek, but it's also its own brand of Star Trek.
Well, to me, it's the better version of what Star Trek wanted to be. Because even like now watching DS9, I couldn't compare the Orville to DS9. It doesn't even match. Like, if anything, the Orville is what TNG was trying to create. It was like the Orville is more of a result of TNG than it is a result of any other Trek. Because like the captain is so much more I want to do this right. Why does the universe keep fighting me? Rather than, I know how to do this right and I'm going to put the universe into submission, which is what every other captain seems to be since TNG.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and that's just it. The Orville also used the DS9 method of partial serialized, partial episodic. We had our episodes where we did Bad Guy of the Week, but then we also had our continued overall arcing plot lines that we tied up by the end of the series, the end of the season. Series isn't over yet. # renew the Orville. However, it's just like I said, my point is the Orville is its own thing. And I think it'd be better if we just start recognizing it kind of more as its own show, and that even if Star Trek gets back to the DS9 standard at some point, that's going to be its own brand of show anyway. It's not going to be the Star Trek that we had, because the Star Trek that we had has already come and gone. And so I don't think it's actually a good idea to even go back to the original style Star Trek, because that was what we did for that time, and we could try to get some kind of retro version, which visually speaking in Picard, that's what they're doing, because they have basically the 25th and 23rd century aesthetic mashed together.
See, for me, I do kind of want them to go back to the older Treks, but the older Trek formula in a new, like renewed sense. Like if it was me, if I was in charge, if I was Kurtzman, what I would do is I would have one boldly going where no Trek has ever gone. I would have one underdecks, cartoon, fun, like here's what's going on for the enlisted on the ship. Here's what the red shirts are doing show. And then I would have one or two, like here's what I can do with Deep Space Nine and modern CG. Here's what I can do with TNG and modern CG. And I would, like, that to me seems like the perfect group of shows to run at the same time, but instead, like, what we're getting is 4 or 5 boldly destroying everything you've ever loved, and one, let's laugh about it.
Yeah, that's what I feel like Lower Decks was kind of trying to do, but we do have some fan mail in the chat. Rami writes in, agree, Orville surpassed Star Trek a long time ago, just like synthwave and 80s music. JRC writes in and says, hey, PJ, free Orville Nation. 100% agree with that. So I think, and what you're saying is kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't watch all of the new Trek properties. I'm not going to. I have no interest, like I said in the beginning of the show, I have no interest in Discovery. I don't care if Picard Season 3 somehow turns out to be the greatest Star Trek show ever. I'm not going to go back and watch Discovery.
I think you should rephrase that. You had interest and immediately lost said interest.
I lost it after Season 2 because the writing was so terrible.
Right, but you wanted it. You wanted it to work. You went in there as an old fan hoping for the best, and you were punched in the mouth. Mm-hmm. It's not that you have no interest and never did because you never believed in them. It's that they burned your interest. They took it and they lost it. And Picard, it looks like, is giving it back to some degree.
Well, and like I said, I'm a bit softer to it because I didn't bother with Season 2. I already, after whatever the hell vomit Season 1 was, I was already done. So I didn't care. And it was just...
But that's what I mean, and that's what I want to say to, like, any film, like any people that are at Star Trek watching us talk about your shows and, like, everything you've done is, like, there's always a chance for us to come back, because we do want Star Trek to work. Like, we want Star Wars to work. We want all of these to be as good as they've always been in our hearts. And we do understand that, like, we've been hyping it up for decades in the break that you've been missed. But at the same time, like, you've been getting money while we've been waiting for you to get money. And now you have it, and this is what you delivered the first time. Season 3 of Picard is the first time where you guys actually seem to have heard us.
Yeah. JRC writes in and says, I literally wept when I saw the Picard Season 1 trailer when I saw Data, my all-time favorite Star Trek character. Okay, this is the first I've actually heard you say that, JRC, or mention that. And I mean, if you've mentioned it before and I just forgot, I apologize. But that makes me understand your perspective all the better. So thank you for sharing. I did. You're not going to get any argument from me that Season 1 was just a slog of trash. And I'm never touching. I even hate thinking back to it because every little thing I can think of about that even call that a show. It was more like mental torture.
Look, I've never seen a movie or read a book or seen a show that talks about the benefits of random amnesia or selective memory, but gotta say, I've got a few, and it's most of the bad television I've ever watched.
I sort of envy you. I might have to try, strategically bludgeoning myself with a hammer at some point, but yeah, no, that's why I didn't bother with season 2, because I already knew not to bother. And Strange New Worlds, we're gonna see how season 2 shapes up for that, but I don't know. So, but I think you're right, John. We have so many Star Trek shows, we have so many properties that I think what we're seeing with Strange New Worlds was a step sort of in the right direction, but not quite the one that we probably should have had. And I think that's probably what we're going to see with Picard season 3. Of course, we'll find out. I don't know. I would like to see more steps in the right direction, and I hope that this shows that, okay, when Akiva Goldsmith or whatever and Kurtzman are actually kept away from a property, and we can show, no, this is what happens when we actually keep these two away from them, then I think we have a good chance of finally getting the Star Trek show that the Legacy fans have wanted. And that's why I choose to have hope.
The only reason I have any honest hope for this is I don't think we're the first group of fans of Star Trek to start calling out these people productively.
Oh, every series has its complaints.
Well, no. I mean, in terms of we weren't the first ones to see Picard season 1 and go, all right, we need to discuss this in all future Star Treks on
we weren't around yet.
Podcast and regularly organize and discuss bad media so that bad media learns how to be good media. I don't think we're the first to start doing that. And what I mean more by that is I think other people were sending the nicer, more professional letters while the people were only ever discussing the angry ones for hype culture. And I think that's what we're getting with episode 1 of season 3 of Picard is an example of those early people writing the professional messages being look, actually, the reason why you guys got Star Trek wrong has nothing to do with LGBTQIA rights, and it has everything to do with the fact that you're writing it.
Your writing is trash.
Exactly, and I think those messages have finally been read.
Sort
of. I
of.
think that's what season 3, episode 1 is a potential.
I can't disagree. I can't disagree with
what you said about Critical Drinker's 6-episode treat. If he's coming back, because I have watched all of his reviews on Trek, and he has never once said a nice thing about Kurtzman Trek, and for this one, for him to be it might be more than too little too late.
Yeah.
That's a big tease.
Yeah, no, and yeah, we'll see. But JRC writes in, says, the problem with S&W is that they are indeed retconning TOS, and you're not going to get an argument from me there. That's why, to me, I see it the same as the JJ movies. It's a new timeline. It's its own thing. Yeah, that's an easy write-off, but it's TOS is Holy Trek to me. TOS doesn't really get a whole lot of nitpicks aside from the obvious because, well, without it, we have nothing. We don't have DS9. We don't have the 6 original Star Trek movies, which are some of the best Star Trek ever. And so on. JRC also says, you guys saw what CBS did to Angry Joe? You must provide additional context. No, I don't.
I didn't see that. But to Parker, to your point, that was more of what I was trying to get at earlier when we opened the Picard discussion, was that TOS is the kind of Trek where everything is excused, even the acted shake scenes, right? That's excused because it was literally writing the first ever version of that. But when you take on writing after everything that's come from that, you never, ever, ever get to use the excuse, well, I just didn't know that that's how it worked. Because they already went through all that didn't know that's how it worked. They already did all of it for you. So now you know how it works. Now you have the source material, the research data to look up and find all of your evidence for how everything works. And the fact that you didn't is only an example of your laziness and not an example of it's too hard, because they already suffered it. They literally shook themselves because they didn't want to shake the cameras.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that, in a way, our discussion about DS9's Necessary Evil ties in because, I'm still trying to look to the future for Star Trek, and I'm still trying to hope that we get a better show, and I do hope that this is the right direction, but we're going to find out. I'm not saying that it is. I'm not saying that the other critics are correct in their assessment because, well, I'm not them. I don't know what they've seen, and I just give my opinion on stuff directly.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't say that they are correct in their assessment, but I would say that based off of their previous assessments, they have had a historical tendency to be right, and they also have been along the same analysis as we've had. Like
sometimes, yeah.
The things that they have issues with tend to be the same things we have issues with, and it's bad writing. It has nothing to do with the characters that are introduced. It has nothing to do with the types of people or the diversity in the casting, and it has everything to do with how they're introduced, how they're brought to the screen, how they're presented on screen. That's what we have a problem with. It's like, if you're going to make superheroes, but also still write a good story.
Okay, that's right. I did see this. Thank you for the refresher, JRC. It's been a long day on almost no sleep. Yeah, so the Angry Joe show situation. So that is a bit of a screwy situation in that basically what happened was this YouTuber Angry Joe put up their season 1 episode 1 review, or season 3 episode 1 review of Picard. I'm losing it. And I guess they got false flagged by CBS Paramount for something. The exact specifics. Definitely not a good sign, since there's been previous issues with, the showrunner Terry Matalas lashing out at fans a few months ago, as we covered.
That if they try to copyright us, we didn't use any of their visual material, and I will show that they are copyright infringing in bad faith, which is also illegal.
Yeah, so they're kind of still digging their own grave once again. It's like we get one step forward with these idiots, and then like 5 steps back, and they do it themselves. I mean, it's almost, one has to wonder, are you guys trying to just piss people off on purpose? Because if you are, let me know so I can stop giving a shit again.
Who are your friends? The 5 people that never pay for dinner because they're richer than you and you want to show off your money, or the people that actually subscribe to your service and, pay your bills? Like, none of your rich friends are ever going to take care of you if you go broke. But
they'll laugh at you. You'll be the subject of their ridicule.
Yeah, exactly. Like George Lucas, if he went broke and started a GoFundMe for Star Wars Episode 7, you bet $1 billion he'd have $1 billion tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely.
But instead, he went to freaking Disney and was like, "You guys know what you're doing with films. You don't, but I think you do because you say you do, and I'm going to go with you instead of, maybe rallying my fans who actually support me and support my content." Like, that's the arrogance of these people at the top, is some of you guys actually belong there because you make good content. That doesn't mean you should keep hanging out with all the people that don't belong there because daddy bought their way in. And you should never listen to the person who daddy bought his way in, because he doesn't know what he's talking about ever.
Jeez, John, it almost ties into our pop culture news regarding Hasbro.
It's kind of like it's culture or something.
Exactly. Orville Nation reports in, I got a strike from CBS Paramount. That's actually one of the reasons why we do our format the way we do with the movie poster style, is we prefer to stay away from that type of stuff. So, because we used to, when we started this show, we were doing Severance reviews, and we would play the opening credits to Severance as, entertainment background. And, well, when we got screwed on that, we decided...
I had to write a ton of, this is not copyright infringement. This is clearly a difference in perspective. And we stopped having to worry about that.
Yeah. Orville Nation says, can I share something from the chat? Sure. I don't know what chat specifically, but please do. Or are you talking about the chat from your stream or show? I don't know. Orville Nation's just getting banned everywhere, and now that he's commented here like several times, it's only a matter of time before our stream gets banned. We get a copyright strike talking to Orville Nation.
Well, they're about ready to deal with somebody who is trained in killing and policy. And I will use both of those tactics to make you hate policy.
I'm just going to leave that one alone.
Well, mostly to say is I have the discipline of a Marine and all of the training of policy writing. So if you're going to come at me with policy letters, I'll write better ones that break yours in half every day of the week.
So, Orville Nation writes in, when I got my strike, Terry contacted me to try to resolve the strike. He bent over backwards. Wow. So, that's again, this just adds to the fact that it looks like we're making progress in the right places, and it's just, we're making progress, guys. It's growing pains. That's the best that I can say about it. It's like you just gotta look at the bigger picture. Like, I'm not saying forgive them for the mess that they made. I'm not saying endorse the shows that's there. Okay, no. We're still gonna call Discovery garbage. Because it's garbage. We're still gonna call Strange New Worlds Nick Jr. TOS because it's Nick Jr. TOS. We're still gonna call Lower Decks Star Trek Rick and Morty. I don't need to explain that one. The point is, we also have to recognize that, for one, Terry said some dumb shit, but he's trying to. And I guess, according to Orville Nation, but Secret Hideout is not Terry, they lie to Terry. Yeah, Secret Hideout seems to lie to everybody. And I mean, the fact that they're lying to their own showrunners, so it sounds like there must actually be a civil war at Paramount that we're just not hearing about because it's not as well known as.
Let us know, because we'll go to war for the people we actually enjoy, and you can just
Paramount. If you want advice, if you want advice on how to make money, we've already volunteered to get a team together to write good Star Trek. I mean,
no, not just that, but like also all of these companies that are like, if we let our internal politics out, maybe all of the people will think we don't know how to run a business, and it's like, no. Let your internal politics out so we can side with the people that deserve to be sided with, and you can better know who to fire tomorrow.
Actually, I got a better idea. Just stop politicking and just make good content. Holy shit. But unfortunately, and you know, people.
That's what I mean is use, like, show your politics so that then we, the fans, can be like, no, we only support these 10 people from that whole team. Like Kurtzman's team. 10 of the writers were nailing it. Everybody else failed. We can fire everyone.
Bad analogy, dude.
These 10 writers are perfect. We want these 10. Keep them forever. Hell, make this one the showrunner because we know his faith in the company. And that's what I mean by let the internal politics be exposed. Look what happened to America when we started showing the internal politics. We started politicking. We started voting and finding the right answer. But like when you hide this all, you look even less trustworthy because we can't figure out if you're ever going to figure it out because we don't know who figured it out.
I mean, as mentioned, Seth MacFarlane figured it out. But like I said, the Orville is its own thing now.
And CBS told him no. And look at the Orville now.
It's still waiting on a season 4 because the execs over at Disney are, look, I'm not going to call you guys stupid, but y'all being dumb. Renew the Orville already. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry, ridiculous is putting it lightly. We've already said 2 of them, but I'm going to say a third one because fuck it.
Look at all the people
It's fucking dumb.
Yeah, look at all the people that jumped in for Kenobi to get ready to hope for a good Kenobi. Look at everybody who jumped in to hope for a good Boba Fett. Look at everybody who jumped in for everything that hoped for it. We all jumped in for Orville Season 3 to be just a show explosion of greatness, and it was. And we all received it exactly as such. Nobody had a bad thing to say about it except for a few minor comments on different episodes, which
I'm still not a fan of episode 2 personally, but
properties Disney in the last 10 years that has that kind of reception? Question mark? Like, get your head out of your ass. Come on. Renew the Orville.
Yeah, exactly. You've heard it here a gajillion times. It's even been said in our chat that we want the Orville season 4. Okay, well, I think we touched all we needed to on Necessary Evil. now to talk about DS9's episode of Necessary Evil. Get the last couple minutes. H. Marie, you've been quiet. Do you have anything to add to the discussion? Just regarding New Trek and better writing?
Oh, well, I think the writer's room that we had with Cameron Pasha and Doomcock is definitely something that needs to be considered by CBS, because, damn, that was fun. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty okay at writing myself, and I would absolutely enjoy being a part of a Star Trek project if given the chance, but, yeah, right, shameless plug, thank you. You can check out some of my okay writing in my book. JRC writes in, correct, the Orville has carried the torch for Gene Roddenberry, Rick Berman, and Ira Bear. Excuse me. And Galinda says, Kira is an incredible character. Yes, and that's what I really like about this particular episode, is we get to really see that, one of the more darker aspects of the character, and it doesn't really change a whole lot on how we view her in the long run. And we certainly recognize that Odo's ability to determine right from wrong, not necessarily just from a law perspective, but from a legitimate moral perspective, really comes through. And when we get some serious character building in that, sure, he comes off as the uncaring, I'm by the book cop, but deep down he might care just a little bit. Just a little bit, though.
Well, I think that was the greatest thing about this episode, is Kira exemplified Odo as, like, so Odo's always been Odo, right? And in this instance, Kira was an example of what Odo looks like when they're busy being a spy, right? So, like, Kira used to be a spy, but now she's finally getting the chance to come out of her shell and be a full member of the Federation in terms of her planet Bajor, but also in terms of, like, her relationship with the commander. And I think Odo has always been more along the lines of, like, that definite operator. Like, he has a clear sign of what
all right.
is.
We are almost out of time, and we do have something to address in the chat. Orville Nation says, we are getting more Orville. I didn't say that out loud, did I? Well, Orville Nation, of course we're getting more Orville. We get more Orville every time you chat, because you're Orville Nation. Now, if you would like to actually come on the show and announce something, I will gladly stall the end of this program for as long as needed. Because if we could get a special announcement, something like that, for our tiny little channel, that would be awesome. But it's your call, buddy, and you've got, like, 3 minutes to decide.
Send people our way to have them jump on our show next week.
You heard it here first. We may or may not be getting more Orville. That's literally what everyone's been thinking anyway.
We've all wanted this whole time.
Yeah. So, while Orville Nation, I will another day. It's too early, LOL. Fucking blue ball my channel again, bro. God, that's like the worst tease ever, too. That's like, I can't. There is the only descriptor I have for that level of tease is too explicit to describe on this channel, and I think you all understand. You can all probably figure it out. I will join you guys some other day. Yeah, well, like I said, invitation's open to you for the next 9 weeks as we continue to review Picard Season 3. I mean, it's always open to you, Orville Nation. You're absolutely welcome on this show. I'm just saying, don't worry too much about Orville. I mean, it's been so many days, I kind of stopped worrying, but...
My big thing is, like, I hope the contract negotiations are like, no, guys, we need you to do 7 seasons. And they're like, come on, we only wrote 5.
Yeah, no, yes. Orville deserves a Star Trek 7. I completely agree. I would even, but with how good Season 3 was, and depending on how those next 4 seasons, hypothetical 4 seasons play out, I could definitely, I see the possibility of 10 seasons with Orville, but at the same time, Star Trek ending at 7 seasons was good for the show, and when shows ended when they were supposed to, like, you kind of felt it. Orville is still too small. We need at least 7.
Well, and I think Orville is, honestly, I do believe that Orville is a lot closer to Family Guy than it is Star Trek in terms of its potential for duration.
Okay, fascinating way to say that.
It's let its universe never collapse in on itself, whereas a lot of other Star Trek seasons really start to hone in on the age of their characters, the aging of their characters, the character development, and that starts to mean like, okay, once we get to know these people, we kind of know how they're going to go in every situation. Whereas like Orville's like, you know who you're dealing with, but you never know what they're going to deal with. Tune in next week.
Oh, JRC talking about Star Trek fanfic, the Holy Car. I think I saw that one. But go ahead and send it to me anyway, since you're offering. All right, well, this starts to bring us towards the end of the program. We got a last couple minutes. Anyone got any quick last words about all the stuff we talked about before I recognize everybody who chatted us in the comments and then get ready to sign off?
I just want to shout out the EPA for using corrupt data to allow people back to Palestine, Ohio. You know, bad data equals bad results, and that's your fault, EPA. We thought you were doing your job.
They were doing their job, just not the way you thought. Anyway, that's a discussion for the Rogue Council. I want to thank everybody, whether you're listening to us live, whether you're listening to us afterwards, whether you're listening to us on the podcast. I want to thank you all so much for your continued support. We do love doing this, and I would like to do this for the rest of my life. And I get to do that thanks to your support. So big shout outs, of course, to Galenda. Severo, I believe, was a first-time watcher. We hope to see you back more. You seem to enjoy our Picard discussion. As well as Orville Nation, of course. So glad you popped in. And Rami, thanks for popping in. Same with you, JRC. Thank you for the extra info that you provided this evening. And I do believe that is everybody who made their presence known. We appreciate your guys' continued support, and we do, of course, enjoy bringing you a quality show. Yes, Orville Nation, I do agree. We are definitely thriving. We're up to 281 subscribers, and JRC says, I'll see you in a month. Either because he's not going to show up for another month, or, well, I think I know what you're alluding to, in which that's the case. Hey, fair winds. I hope it's uneventful, and thank you for your service to this great land. Anyone else? Final thoughts? Parting words?
Yeah, I think that we need to start a revolt, man. I'm really starting to feel like at some point these writers just gotta write a solid manifesto about.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, I think we've said all we need to. I'm Petey York, the Writer Brothers. We'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of the Writer Brothers Tuesday Night Live Show. The Writer Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.